The pod hit the atmosphere like a brick in a blender. Alarms screamed, lights blinked like they were auditioning for a disco, and the AI's last recorded words before melting into static were, "Impact imminent. Regret nothing." Comforting. Very comforting. Hal clutched the harness so tight his knuckles lost all color, which didn't matter, because he was about to be charcoal anyway. The impact slammed into him, tossing his organs around like maracas in a tumble dryer. And then nothing. Silence. When he came to, the sky was upside down. Or maybe he was. The pod had crumpled into a crater, half buried in purple moss that smelled suspiciously like burning cinnamon and regret. Hal groaned, tried to sit up, and was immediately reminded that gravity was not his friend. Something sharp was lodged in his side, possibly part of the chair, or his dignity. "Great," he muttered. "Survived the crash just to die of space tetanus." He crawled out of the wreckage, boots squelching through the spongy alien ground. The trees, if they could be called that, looked like jellyfish married to chandeliers. They hovered rather than stood, their roots dangling lazily in the air, pulsing with soft cyan light. Somewhere in the distance, something roared like a blender full of wolves. Hal ignored it. First rule of xenobiology. If something screams, don't scream back. He spent the first day gathering supplies. What remained of the pod's emergency kit consisted of 3 protein bars, a cracked thermal blanket, a multi-tool that only folded halfway, and an attitude problem. He found a clearing near a massive tree whose trunk shimmered like obsidian in moonlight, and set up camp. The planet's sun was lazy. It dipped below the horizon just enough to make things dramatic before bouncing back up again like it had forgotten its keys. On day 3, while trying to extract drinking water from a vine that oozed glitter, Hal met her. He didn't see her at first, just a flicker of movement, then the unmistakable click-click of a weapon charging. Okay, we're doing the whole shoot the alien in the forest thing," Hal said, raising his hand slowly. "Classic move, very vintage." She stepped out from behind a cluster of luminous stones. Tall, poised, and not at all what he expected. She looked human almost. Same number of limbs, same general proportions. But her skin had a faint bluish sheen, like moonlight on deep water, and her ears were long, tapering back like the wings of a sleek bird. Her eyes glowed faintly, and when she spoke, it sounded like a chime wrapped in wind. He had no idea what she said. "I'm gonna take that as a hello," Hal said, grinning despite the weapon pointed at his head. "Or prepare to be vaporized. Could go either way." She tilted her head, blinked slowly, then looked at the protein bar he was still clutching like a diplomatic offering. "Oh, you want this?" He tossed it to her. She caught it midair, sniffed it, then gagged with impressive theatricality. "Yeah, fair. Tastes like plastic regrets and gym socks." She didn't laugh, but her eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. She said something else, slower this time. He caught only one word, "Rylnya." Rylnya got it. "I'm Hal, human, professional disappointment." And somehow that was enough. By the end of the week, they'd developed a system. She'd point at things and give names. He'd try to mimic them and inevitably butcher the pronunciation. She'd laugh, finally, a sound like warm wind through crystal, and correct him. He started calling her species the Orlin because she hadn't corrected him yet. Her actual word for it sounded like a hiccup mixed with a heartbeat. She showed him how to find clean water, hint, the glitter vines were lying, and which plants wouldn't try to strangle him in his sleep. He, in turn, taught her the art of sarcasm, though it was a slow process. When a bird the size of a small shuttle tried to eat him, she merely watched as he flailed with a stick and shouted, "Bad bird, I am not a snack." Until it flew off, probably out of sheer embarrassment. She looked at him afterward deadpan. "You fight like Leaf." "That's right," he said, panting. "Deadly, fluttery, and biodegradable." That night they shared a fire made from glowing bark that sparked in technicolor bursts. She worked on repairing a broken panel from the pod. He wasn't sure how she'd learned to wire tech, but she had a delicate, confident touch. He watched her work, half-lidded, the exhaustion of the day settling into his bones. "You know," he said, half to himself, "you're not bad company for a tall, blue-eared murder elf." She glanced at him, one brow arched. Murder elf. A term of endearment. Don't worry, it's Earth stuff. Very prestigious title. She snorted, which he decided was the universal sound of reluctant amusement. Time blurred on that planet. Days passed in a loop of survival and slow companionship. Their shelter evolved from a half-tent into a solid hut made from resin-wrapped stones and psionic wood that bent when whispered to. He never quite figured out how she convinced the tree to grow a roof, but it sure beat arguing with the tarp. One morning he woke to find her gone. Panic hit like a dropped stone. He stumbled into the forest, calling her name, his version of it anyway. After 2 hours he found her calmly harvesting mushrooms from a grove that smelled like a bakery. "You left," he said, breathless. "I return," she said simply. Then added, "You panic loud. Well, excuse me for not wanting my only friend/interpreter/murder elf roommate to vanish." She looked at him, then at the mushroom, then offered him one. He took it without thinking. It tasted like disappointment and cinnamon. That night, a storm rolled across the horizon, clouds thick with static, flashing red and green as they swirled above them like a living thing. They huddled under the shelter, rain lashing sideways, thunder cracking with the voice of gods on bad coffee. Hal wrapped the thermal blanket around them both, ignoring her mild confusion at human proximity comfort rituals. She didn't pull away. "Do your storms always try to kill people?" he asked over the roar. "Yes," she said, "very enthusiastic weather." He laughed. He couldn't help it. She didn't laugh with him, but she leaned closer, and that was better. When the lightning split a tree in half, he barely flinched. They were alive, together. And for the first time since the crash, Hal didn't feel stranded. He felt anchored, which was terrifying, because it meant he'd started to care. The translator still didn't understand the word nope, but Hal was committed to teaching it anyway. He repeated it, enunciating carefully as he pointed to the spiked, glowing fruit Rylnya had just plucked from a vine that looked like it was trying to wink at him. "Nope," he said again, wagging a finger like some kind of interstellar kindergarten teacher. "As in, do not eat that, I like my insides where they are." Rylnya tilted her head, sniffed the fruit, then took a confident bite. "Rylnya, no." Too late. She chewed once, blinked twice, and exhaled a short puff of green smoke from her nose. "Well," Hal said, "either you've unlocked dragon mode or your sinuses are about to file a noise complaint." She waved a hand at him dismissively, then pointed to his canteen. He passed it over, and she drank with the grim resolve of someone trying not to admit a mistake. They sat on a ridge overlooking a stretch of jungle that looked like it had been designed by a colorblind architect with a glitter addiction. Giant lily-like leaves pulsed with light, and insect swarms moved in synchronized spirals like tiny, bioluminescent dance troupes. Rylnya was drawing again. A thin slate of hardened sap served as her canvas, and her stylus was a shard of crystal wrapped in fiber. The figures were becoming more detailed now, two humanoid shapes among a shifting world of wind patterns and strange glyphs. Hal tried not to read into it. Instead, he occupied himself with the latest patch to the translator interface. It still misfired occasionally. Last week it told Rylnya he wanted to mate the tree when he was just trying to explain tree sap extraction. That had been a fun conversation, but progress was real. They were communicating better. Not perfectly. Half of what she said still sounded like musical math, but well enough to build shared routines. Mornings began with water collection and a long argument over who was better at climbing. Afternoons were for scavenging salvage from the pod wreckage and whatever relics they found in the ruins scattered nearby. Structures made of stone and some kind of pressure-reactive metal, humming faintly when touched. Evenings were stories. Hal talked about Earth, about cities with skies full of blinking advertisements and trains that still managed to be late despite AI scheduling. Rylnya told him, when the translator didn't mess it up, about her people's lunar origin, their floating cities carved into asteroids, and the ancient silence they believed surrounded all living things before birth. One night she told him something that stuck. In your tongue we have word, Keleshin. It is bond, not blood, not law, but chosen. He'd nodded, curious, like family. She frowned slightly. No, more deliberate. You wake, you see, you say. I walk with you, that is Keleshin. He wanted to joke, wanted to say something like, well, I hope I'm at least in the application process. But her expression was too calm, too certain, and so he let the silence hold. By the end of the second month, they were an efficient, sarcastic machine. She fixed the water condenser by reverse engineering it with spare drone parts. Hal programmed a sensor grid that would beep like an angry toaster whenever a life form larger than a terrier came too close. They argued about naming the squirrel-lizard hybrid that kept trying to steal their food. Hal called it Jeff. Rylnya insisted it was Yashaltek, which apparently meant vibrating shame. Jeff stuck. The deeper into the planet's wild zones they ventured, the stranger the ruins became. One structure resembled a spiral staircase that went nowhere, each step engraved with symbology that shimmered under moonlight. Another ruin, half swallowed by moss, pulsed when they approached, sending faint waves through the translator that made Hal's ears itch. Whatever civilization had lived here, it was gone, but not silent. Then came the first drone. Hal spotted it hovering above the tree line, a silvery, egg-shaped machine with a flickering blue core and 4 insectoid limbs folded beneath. Company, he said, ducking behind a rock. Rylnya didn't move. Her eyes narrowed. Old sky machine, she murmured. Not yours. Nope, definitely not Earth issue. I mean, our drones don't hover ominously and hum like Gregorian monks with indigestion. The drone turned, scanned, buzzed once. Then zipped off toward the horizon. Hal looked at her. Friendly, you think? She stood slowly. Hunters do not announce. They found another 1-2 days later, this time deactivated, half buried in a ravine. Its core was cracked, and a long tendril of burnt wiring trailed behind it like a tail. Rylnya prodded it with a stick. Nothing happened. Hal poked it with a multi-tool. Everything happened. The drone jerked to life with a dying screech and projected a burst of static data into the air. Schematics, star maps, code overlays in languages neither of them recognized. Rylnya pulled him back just as the drone exploded in a puff of steam and shrapnel. Okay, Hal coughed. That's a no on taking it home for parts. They brought back a fragment of the casing and some of the projection data, which Rylnya began decoding using a mix of rhythmic tapping and alien math that made Hal's eyes cross. He helped where he could, mostly by staying out of the way and naming her tools things like stabby bit and wire chomp. She pretended to hate it. That night, as a soft meteor shower passed overhead, he handed her a ration pack with a wink. Dinner, my lady. Rehydrated spaghetti and something pretending to be meat. She sniffed it. This is food. Legally, barely. It has nutritional particles. She took a bite, then shook her head. Your people have made war on taste. He laughed, leaned back, and sighed. Weird how normal this is starting to feel. She glanced over, storm before calm. Maybe, or maybe we're just very adaptable. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at the stars. Do you ever wish someone found us? He nodded. Sometimes. But then I remember I'm the only human on a planet where everything either glows, growls, or explodes. And I've got you. She didn't look at him, but she smiled. Just a little. It was enough. The bird screamed again. Hal flinched behind a tree whose bark was visibly unimpressed by his survival instincts. The thing had followed them for half a click, 3 wings, 2 heads, one very persistent vendetta. I told you not to mock its mating call, Rylnya said, crouched beside him, a hand on the hilt of her plasma knife. I wasn't mocking it. I was harmonizing. There's a difference, Hal hissed. I was being friendly. You insulted its nest. I complimented its nest. I said it looked like a 5-star alien airboom. She raised one of her elegant eyebrows. And then you asked if the extra head came with a refund. In my defense, it was staring at me like it wanted to charge rent. The bird shrieked again, this time closer. Hal made a noise somewhere between a groan and a prayer. All right, plan B. I run and distract it with my overwhelming lack of grace. You stab it while it's confused. Plan B is always you running. Because it's the part I'm best at. She stood first, signaling for him to wait. She pulled something from her belt, a small orb wrapped in thin copper vines and humming faintly. With a flick, she lobbed it over a ridge. There was a pop, a shrill hum, and then the unmistakable sound of the bird deciding it had better things to do. Hal blinked. Was that a sonic decoy? No, it was a broken translator chip and part of your old boot. That was my boot. You weren't using it. He stared at his feet. She was right. He had one boot and a glorified sandal made from bark and spite. They resumed their trek through the jungle, following a barely visible path that pulsed beneath their feet. A natural network of phosphorescent roots, Rylnia claimed, remembered old roots. Hal didn't argue. He was still bitter about the boot. Ahead, the canopy opened into a sun-drenched basin. In the center stood a structure unlike the others they'd seen, tall, triangular, black as obsidian but flickering like it couldn't decide if it was solid or dreaming. Okay, Hal said, stopping short. That building is phasing in and out of existence. Just me, or... It's real, Rylnia said, already moving forward. Temporal bleed. Right, totally normal. Definitely saw that on my architecture midterm. As they approached, their comm devices began picking up bursts of static and fragmented transmissions. Hal fiddled with his receiver. L5 observation node, survivor anomalous signal, loop detected, loop detected. What does that mean? Rylnia frowned. Satellite memory architecture, it's still active, listening. To what? To us. Hal's spine went cold. Inside the structure, they found what could only be described as a control chamber. Hollow and wide, the walls shimmered with sequences of alien glyphs that rearranged themselves whenever they moved. Touch nothing, Rylnia warned. He had already touched something. A panel lit beneath his hand, and a thin blue beam scanned his palm. Rylnia tensed, reaching for her knife, but the structure merely whirred and projected a star map into the air, one they recognized. It was this system, this planet, their crash zone, but overlaid on it were ghostly echoes of movement, small dots like ships or satellites flickering in and out of visibility. What are those? Probes, scouting units. Look, this one is near our crash point. Hal zoomed in using what he hoped was the equivalent of a pinch gesture. That one was overhead 3 days ago. You think they're tracking us? She was quiet then. I think they're trying to finish what was started. The terminal pulsed again, this time projecting something different. A line of text translated imperfectly, sentience detected, correction initiated, prepare for reset. Hal stared. That sounds deeply ominous. It thinks we're in error. Wouldn't be the first time. Rylnia began dismantling the panel with quick, precise movements, speaking in her native tongue too fast for the translator. Hal knelt beside her. You okay? She didn't look up. This facility was a relay for planetary oversight. It has limited autonomy but can communicate with higher network nodes. Like the satellite we saw, she nodded. This was a scout post. It marked the planet for terraforming. The process was interrupted. By extinction. By war. The word hit like a dropped stone. Someone tried to erase this world, she continued, but some of the systems survived. Long enough to detect us. Hal stood slowly, watching the glyphs flicker across the walls. You think it'll try again? It won't try, it is. They left the structure as the glyphs began to glow red. The jungle around them responded, leaves twitching, vines drawing inward like nervous fingers. That night the sky glowed with arcs of electric blue. Hal sat beside the fire, knees drawn to his chest. Rylnia worked in silence, crafting a pulse jammer from old drone parts and the remaining salvage from the translator core. He watched her for a while. You know, he said, back on Earth, I used to fix old satellites for fun. Ran diagnostics, wiped corrupted logs, patched firmware updates. It felt important, like I was maintaining the great nervous system of civilization. She didn't respond. Now, he continued, I'm hiding from a satellite that wants to vaporize me for being too clever. Ironic, right? Your civilization made machines like this. He laughed, but it didn't sound right. We dreamed of it. Just never figured out how to make them not insane. Rylnya set the jammer down. It's not insane, it's following protocol. You're the error. Yeah, Hal said softly, feels about right. There was a long silence. Then, you said something the first time you fixed the shelter. Oh, you said, thank you, my love. He blinked. Yeah, casual Earth thing, just a phrase meant comfort, affection, habit, really. She was very still. No one has ever said that to me. The air grew thick. Oh, in my language those words are sacred, not habit, they are only spoken once, with meaning. Hal opened his mouth, closed it. Well, he said after a pause, I suppose now's a great time to explain Earth's sarcasm. She smiled faintly. Teach me. He nodded. Then the jammer buzzed and the sky screamed. The jammer lasted 18 minutes and 42 seconds before it began to smoke like a guilty toaster. Hal stared at it. Well, that's one way to say we're doomed in binary. Rylnya didn't answer. She was staring at the scanner, its display flickering with a growing heat signature just above the tree line. It's moving faster, she said. Maybe it's delivering cupcakes. She gave him a look. All right, not cupcakes. They scrambled to pack the essentials. Hal grabbed the field tablet, 3 power cells, and a half-crushed protein bar he'd named Greg. Rylnya pocketed the signal scrambler and slung a coil of conductive thread over her shoulder. The drone wasn't chasing them. It was scanning in expanding sweeps, and every few seconds it pulsed out a signal that made Hal's fillings vibrate. They ran northeast, following the cracked root veins of the psionic trees. With each step, the forest seemed to grow quieter, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Hal was the first to break the silence. You ever feel like we're in one of those old space horror hollows? The ones where the guy says something casual and then boom, wall of teeth. Rylnya kept running. You are the guy who says something casual. Thank you for noticing. They reached the mouth of a cave just as another pulse burst through the atmosphere. Hal doubled over, hands on knees, breath coming hard. Why, he gasped, do all death robots chase people uphill? It builds character. They ducked into the cave. The walls shimmered faintly, coated in a kind of reactive moss that flickered when touched. Inside, the air was cooler, denser. Old carvings lined the interior, angular spirals intersecting with star charts and strange humanoid silhouettes. Hal ran a hand along one of the figures. You think this was their safe house? Maybe. He looked at her. Or maybe we just broke into a holy place, and now we're going to be cursed by ancient holographic monks. Do curses cause headaches and sarcasm? They cause sarcasm. The headaches are just me. They moved deeper into the cave, guided by the flickering moss and the rhythmic clicking of Rylnya's tracking tool. Something was pinging, an old signal, weak but consistent. It didn't match any of the satellite's frequencies. Hal knelt beside a half-buried panel. It was part of an old console, clearly damaged but still faintly humming. This is chiral IV tech, he said. Looks hybridized, like it's Earth-adjacent. Rylnya joined him, scanning the interface with her lens array. Not Earth, not Oralin, but someone tried to speak both languages through it. Hal connected a power cell. The console flickered to life. A projection snapped into view, an AI unit faded and jittery. Protocol breach. Archive status fragmented. Hostilities unresolved. Reset pending. Countdown initiated. The timer read 72 hours. Rylnya said nothing. Hal stared at it. 3 days, he said. 3 days before what? Full reset. What does that even mean? She tapped the display. If satellite completes protocol, it will activate the core. Terraforming ignition. Everything here will burn. Neat and cozy. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Hal said, we could leave a note. Sorry we touched your cave. Please don't fry the biosphere. She looked at him. Do you always use jokes when scared? It's either that or hyperventilate into my sock. They debated options. Fight the drone network. Impossible. Hack the orbital satellite. Probably suicidal. Evacuate? No ship. But the console had something, a partial uplink. Not enough to cancel the countdown, but enough to send a signal. Rylnya turned to him. You said Earth used to use deep code encryption for satellites, yes? Yeah, why? We combine your code with my pulse cadence, confuse the signal, make satellite think protocol already complete. He blinked. You want to fake a planetary reset, trick the system into thinking we're already toast? She nodded. Precisely. We burn a copy of ourselves, make noise, leave ghosts. Hal considered it. You know, I once flunked a test for ethics in AI manipulation. I think this qualifies as poetic revenge. They got to work. Hal wrote loops of diagnostic gibberish with familiar command structures. Earth tech still lingered in the bones of the satellite's architecture. Rylnya added harmonic layers, broadcasting encoded pulses at carefully timed intervals. It was working. The console began echoing false positives. The drone network dimmed slightly on the scanner. By nightfall, they had a 62% chance of success. Rylnya insisted it was higher. Hal suggested she not jinx it. They sat by a small field fire in the outer chamber, warm light flickering over the alien symbols above. She stirred a bowl of root broth. He stirred the protein bar pieces into it. This is a war crime, he said, sniffing it. Then we commit it together. He smiled. She hesitated. When you said the words before, I know. I want to understand what you meant. Hal set the bowl down. It wasn't supposed to be heavy. It was a moment, but now I think it was heavier than I realized. Because I reacted. No, because I meant it. She didn't move. But her glow shifted just faintly. In your culture, it means something sacred, he said. For me, it's something I never said easily, not even back home. You say it to those you bond with. Yeah. Even if the bond feels strange or sudden or wrapped in alien moss. She reached out, fingers grazing his wrist. I still hear it, she said, like it echoed. Then maybe, Hal said softly, it was meant to. The scanner beeped. Rylnya stood. DroneNet is closing again. We must send the signal now. They returned to the console. The final packet of false data was ready, set to trigger a chain of pings across the orbital lattice. Hal hesitated before pressing it. If this works, we might get left alone forever. If it doesn't, she said, we'll still have Greg. Greg the protein bar died bravely, Hal said. May his sacrifice not be in vain. He pressed the sequence. The console flared, the signal leapt. Above the sky shimmered drones veering, confused. The satellite blinked red, then yellow, then green, and went quiet, for now. Hal woke to the sound of silence. Not just ordinary silence, the kind that follows disaster movies right before the credits roll. No humming drones, no satellite pulses, no spontaneous root explosions. Just stillness. Rylnya was already up, crouched beside the scanner with her hair pulled back, eyes narrowed. Anything? He asked. No pings, no movement. Orbit shows null. She looked at him. It believed the signal. He rubbed his face. We faked our own extinction. Should we throw a party? She tilted her head. What is party? A celebration with food, music, regrettable dancing. You already do that alone. I never said I wasn't the party. They sat outside their shelter, watching the sunrise smear orange over the treetops. The forest began to wake again, cautious at first, birds returning, vines relaxing, the local ecosystem collectively exhaling. Rylnya handed him a piece of root bread. He chewed it thoughtfully. You ever think, Hal said between bites, that this planet tried to kill us just to make sure we'd like each other more? Rylnya blinked. It worked. Hal chuckled. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me while handing me alien carbohydrates. She didn't answer immediately. She was watching the horizon. I have question. Shoot. Will you leave? He paused. Is that an option? You fixed the satellite net. Your beacon is free. If you call Earth now, someone will come. He didn't respond, not right away. She turned to him. You want to go home? Hal looked around, the shelter they built together. The scavenged tech array that now doubled as a weather station. The fire pit where they used to argue about whether Rylnia's mushroom soup was edible or not. The half-repaired AI drone that now only repeated 3 phrases in a French accent. Thing is, he said, I think I did go home, just not the one I expected. Rylnia nodded. You changed. He snorted. I wear mismatched boots and talk to my tools like they're coworkers. Of course I've changed. Not that. She looked at him. Before you were untethered. He raised an eyebrow. Are you calling me emotionally adrift or just bad at making friends? Yes. Fair. He stood, brushing dirt off his pants. All right, I'll send the message. Just not for a ride. She raised an eyebrow. He grinned. A report. Planet stable. Inhabitants weird but acceptable. No need to glass it. Might even ask for remote monitoring. Maybe we keep the satellite quiet. Forever. And what will you tell them about me? That you saved me. Taught me how to make soup that might not be poison. Introduced me to your weirdly sarcastic trees. And he hesitated. That I accidentally said sacred bonding words and now have to learn how to mean them the right way. She stepped closer. You mean them now? Yeah, he said softly. I think I do. The comm unit hummed softly as he keyed in a one-way burst transmission. No coordinates, no rescue request, just status encrypted and laced with benign static. A message that said, all is well. Let this place be. He turned back. Rylnia was watching him, arms folded, the wind catching the ends of her long ears like little silver leaves. So, she said, you stay. Looks that way. We finish what we started, he smiled. We build a garden that doesn't try to eat us, find the rest of those old ruins, maybe turn the dead drones into furniture. She gave a rare laugh. You still bad at climbing trees. You still eat rocks and call it breakfast. She offered her hand. He took it. They walked into the clearing together, side by side, where the jungle opened up to a field bathed in gold light and the promise of another ordinary, unpredictable, possibly dangerous day. Hal glanced at her. Hey, thank you, my love. She stopped. He smiled. Still casual, still Earth style. She leaned in close. Then I say it back, not casually. Her voice wrapped around the words like a song older than satellites. They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to.